Hello, everyone. My name is Aisha Langford, and I'm the founder of Funeral Syllabus, where our motto is make a plan, keep the peace, leave a legacy. Today, I'll be talking with Lynda Shrager about how to help our loved ones age in place and declutter their living spaces. Lynda is a nationally recognized occupational therapist, social worker, and certified aging in place specialist with more than 30 years of experience helping older adults live safely and independently. Known as the Organized Caregiver, she is the author of Age in Place, a guide to modifying, organizing, and decluttering mom and dad's home. Thank you for joining me, Lynda, and let's jump right into the questions. So, you've built a very unique career blending occupational therapy, social work, and home organizing. What inspired your career path?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me today. And yes, I guess when you look at it that way and list all those things, they are a little different. But what happened was when I was young, a local center for the disabled opened around the corner from my house. And I went over there and I asked to volunteer as a kid. They had a day camp and I started volunteering. And I learned what is occupational therapy, which I never really heard of. And I fell in love with that career. It was just great to see and to learn about. So then I decided to go to college for OT. I was very lucky to find Boston University, which had a great program, and that's where I went. And at the end, when you're done with 4 years of school, you have to do an internship. And all of the kids in my class picked pediatrics. And even though I had worked with the kids at the Center for Disabled, I knew I really wanted geriatrics. And interestingly, I was the only one in the whole class that chose to do an internship in geriatrics. Um, and so that's what I did. And I worked with the elderly, and I loved doing that. And so after that, a couple years later, I was working in the field and I decided I wanted my master's degree. And I wasn't quite sure. I live in Albany, New York. We didn't have a ton of choices, but at that point I had a family. So I decided to get my MSW. And I'll tell you, I don't practice social work per se, but every day of my career, I've used it. All of the things that I learned in dealing with people, and so it was a nice combination of OT and social work. And then in July of 1994, we call it the day that everything changed in my family. My 6-year-old was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and that came out of the blue. And I really didn't had never heard of it, but we there it was. And 2 hours later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Wow.
So our life was completely turned upside down, and I needed to organize two life-threatening illnesses at the same time, me being the mother of the kid with one of them and the patient. So my organizing brain, I was always very organized just by nature. And thankfully, because it was second opinions and all the doctors and all the tests and all the medication. So that's how it all started. And I actually wrote a book about that called Otherwise Healthy many, many, many years ago. But that's how I realized that organizing is a way to reduce stress because if you have it all on the paper and in front of you, it's not all over the place and muddling up your mind. So that's how this all came about.
Wow, that's a really interesting and inspiring journey. So, how did those experiences and I guess other experiences lead you to write your book, Age in Place, a guide to modifying, organizing, and decluttering mom and dad's home?
Well, through the years, I started in nursing homes and I ended up doing home care. So, as an OT, I would go into someone's house, and this was always because something had happened. So, they were in the hospital, they broke their hip, they had a heart attack, they were diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And I was in the trenches because I would go in right when they came home, usually from a hospitalization, and I could see that nobody had planned anything. So they had a colonial home with stairs. How are we going to get dad in the house? How are we going to get on the toilet? How are we going to get on the shower, into the shower? Of course, they hadn't planned that because most people do not. So I realized that if I could help people have a plan in place before the crisis occurs, then it wouldn't be such a crisis. So, and the other thing was that I was working with families and I was realizing that these families were in crisis because they hadn't made any kind of a plan. So, my idea was, why don't I just write this sort of guide, if you will, to what to do to make the home navigable, to make life navigable before all these things occur. And so that's where the book came in, and that's where it came from.
Okay. And I can tell just from my own experiences, helping my own family and encouraging other families to think about decluttering. What emotional or psychological barriers do families face when trying to help aging parents declutter?
You know what? It's hard to get rid of your stuff. Okay. And when we get pushback, that's often, if we delve in a little bit, it's the nature of the attachment of the object more than the object itself. So that's why it becomes so when you have, grandma's cup and saucer that she gave your mom on the day she got engaged, that's what's in her head, not the literal piece of china. So that's why it tends to be so difficult. So what I do is I ask people, what is the meaning of this object to you? And maybe we can write it down. Maybe we can make a little video like you and I are doing, little interview to remember that that's the reason. So I explain the goal for decluttering, and or I have them look at it. Do you want to travel more? Do you want to have an easier environment to move around? That's what OTs do. We look at someone's environment. We try to make it safe as we possibly can. And if there's all this stuff all over the place, it's not safe and it's stressful. So I have somebody answer some of these questions. Think about this, the cup and saucer, for example. What is the likelihood you'll use it again? Can you make money from it if you sell it? Would someone else have a benefit if they have it? Is there a special person I would want to give it to? How would my life change if I got rid of this object? And what's the absolute worst thing that could happen if I don't have it anymore? And then, in a good one, if I needed it in the future, could I get it again? So we go through all of these things, and it really does sort of help somebody to start to declutter.
Okay. And how can adult children approach this process without triggering defensiveness or guilt in their parents?
Well, I do a whole chapter in my book on how do we know when mom and dad need help and how do we
Mhm.
get in there and start. And the bottom line is I say to the kids, we'll call them the adult kids, um, that you have to really try to meet in the middle with mom and dad. You have to make a deal. You have to say, okay, I know that you want to stay home in your house, but right now you're unsafe. The house is unsafe. So here's the deal. We need to make this more accessible. We need to declutter. We need to make it easier to navigate. And if you agree to do that, then you can stay home. If I'm worried that you're going to fall every time you get up and go to the bathroom, then we have to maybe talk about something else. So I try to show them how to sort of get to that deal, how to work cooperatively with mom and dad. They're your parents, okay? They're not your children. And you don't really get to parent them. I mean, there are some books out there and which always you kind of offend me, how to parent your parents. Well, you
Mm.
know what? They're your parents. They taught you everything you know. They deserve the respect that just in being their age and their parents. So the way I say this is don't go in there and start, we're going to do this and do that and being the boss. Say them, we're going to make a deal, we're going to meet in the middle. And that way it's a win-win. And as I say on my tagline of the book, they'll be safe and you'll be sane.
Wow, that's great. And so, related to your point that you just made, which is such an excellent point that they are our parents, not our children, what role do you see adult children playing in helping to future-proof a loved one's home? And how can they or how can we do that, achieve that goal with respect and empathy?
Well, that's the thing. So we're not, what we're doing is we're going into the house and we're saying, I talk about universal design, and universal design is just a concept that spaces and products can be used by anybody, whether it's a mother, a young mother who has a newborn in a stroller and now is trying to walk into your house and you have 3 steps to get in. It's not necessarily handicap accessible. And that's, we try to get away from that term and just get into that the house and the surroundings should just be easy to navigate. So the problem is that the old homes, and I'm in Albany, New York, and the neighborhoods that I work around here are many older homes, and they were not built with this concept of visitability. There's a concept of visitability is the word, and it means that that anyone could visit your home no matter what their problem is. So the features of visitability, there's only three: having a 0 step entrance so that somebody can get in the house in the first
Mm.
place, having interior doors that are at least 32 inches wide because a walker or a wheelchair needs that width to get into the rooms, and that there is some kind of a bathroom on the main floor. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be the full bath, and that's everybody's nightmare when I go into these homes, because of course usually the shower and everything is upstairs. That's, we can talk about that later, but the idea is if you have these concepts, then anybody could come. So when we're looking at our parents or our loved ones home, for the future, just those concepts are important. The bathroom having at least a 32 to 36-inch doorway. Hallways 42 inches wide are ideal for wheelchairs. The shower, a 0 threshold. Nobody ever has that. Okay, but that's what I do, is help them modify so that they can get one. And lever doorknobs, which is a doorknob that it's like a lever shape, and you can open it with your elbow, so you don't need a
Okay.
fist. Those are great, and that kind of thing. So those are the things that in the future, and again, we can talk about that in a little later too, what to look for. But those are some of the concepts to prepare ahead, and to say to mom and dad again, I want you to stay here. I get it. You don't want to go to a nursing home. You want to stay in your home. Let's look at the house and let's figure out how.
Right. Those are great tips. I never thought about the doorknobs, like the round ones versus like a lever, like something as seemingly trivial or small as that could make it very more easy for people to visit and even just navigate
I mean,
doorways.
here's a good, we have the round ones for arthritis, for weakness in the hand, having the grip to be able to turn it. And it's very hard. And so my daughter, who has now 2 babies, is childproofing the home. And she put those kind of doorknobs with a big fat round thing over it so the kid can't get out and open the door.
Okay.
And nor can the grandmother. Okay.
Right,
so,
right.
so it's a perfect example of how certain things don't work for certain people. They make it
Right.
really hard. So we
Okay.
just want to make it easy.
Okay. And in your book, you share a room by room approach. And why is this method effective for families who are just starting this process?
Well, because I say to them, if you look at the whole house, and the whole house is this big cluttered disaster of tons of stuff, you get very overwhelmed. So you say, I can't do this. Oh my God, I can't look at it's so big, I can't start. So the trick is that you don't look at the whole house. You look at a little piece. You bite this off one piece at a time, one bite at a time, as they say, and you break up this project into small little pieces. So I'll say to somebody, let's do 2 hours at a time. So for 2 hours, we're going to go into the den, and we're going to go into that big closet in the den where you've thrown everything in the world, and we're just going to work on that closet. We're going to set a timer. We're not going to deviate. We're going to do it. And in 2 hours, you can pretty much get that little piece done. But then you have the positive visual reinforcement of, oh, look, every time I look at that closet, it looks amazing. It's all organized. I can find things. And that's how you do it. So you break it up, and then we're going to do the counter in the kitchen, maybe just the counter. There's no rush to this. I mean, we don't have to do it all in one day, but if we start breaking it up into little pieces, we can do it. And so When we get in there, then we have to look at the stuff. And I tell people divide it up into 5 groups. Keep, so you make a keep pile, a giveaway pile, a garage sale pile, a charitable donations pile, and a throwaway right now, which hopefully is the biggest pile. What you don't get to do is say, we're going to have a hold pile. Because what happens, what you can guess, everything goes in the hold pile. But
Right.
no, you don't get to handle it twice. You only handle it once. So one of those piles it has to go into. You don't get to hold it and then, oh, I'll do it later, because then again, you're going to get into that rut. You'll never get it done. So you do that kind of thing. And if you make those piles, and you just work it a little piece at a time, even if it takes you weeks or a month, you can get through the whole house.
Okay. And speaking of houses or whatever living spaces people are in, what are some of the most overlooked safety risks in a typical home? And what quick fixes might you recommend?
Well, there's a lot of those. And I'll tell you, I talk about this also in the book. There's a lot of things that are very low cost or even no cost. So it's not like we're talking about you're going to gut your home and start all over again and have to spend a lot of money. I have never done a home modification ever where I haven't at least suggested grab bars. Grab bars, grab bars, grab bars. They work everywhere. I'm just reworking my website, and I'm putting some pictures up and showing that it doesn't even have to be just in the shower, but I put grab bars in people's hallways. I put them opposite the toilet. I put them at the sink to hold on. A man might need to hold on it and shave with one hand and hold on with the other. So grab bars are very, very important. Banisters. So look at your staircase. A railing on both sides makes a huge difference, not just one, because there's a good chance that whatever medical reason, someone might have some weakness on one side, so they can go up, they can't come back down because the
Okay.
railing's on the wrong side. Good lighting throughout the house is essential, very important. Furniture, you want to place furniture where it is not in the pathway. So I'll look at the pathways. If you're in the den and you go to the bathroom a lot, what does that pathway look like? If you're in the living room and you need to get to the kitchen, what does that pathway look like? So where is the furniture and can we move it? Flooring should be non-slip. It should be something that you're not going to step on and go flying. The toilet seat. So toilets, when you're an OT, toilet seats are your life. Okay, so very big on
Okay.
so the older home, an older toilet is usually only about 15 inches high. So it becomes a long journey down when you have to get down on that toilet and then get up. 17 to 19 inches is called comfort height, ADA height, accessible height toilets. If you're redoing your toilets, now's the time to get a higher toilet. It makes a huge difference. People really have trouble getting on and off the toilet. The bed should be the right height. I look at everybody's bed. 22 inches high from floor to mattress is the standard. So how do you know that? Well, you go in, sit on the bed. When you put your 2 feet on the floor, are your hips at 90 degrees, your knees at 90, your ankles at 90, your feet flat on the floor? If that's all true, it's a good height. It usually never is. The beds these days have the big comfort top and the pillow top and all
Right.
this, and they're up and so high that it makes it hard. You can sit on it, but then to go get your body from the waist down, to get your legs up, if you've had a knee done, if you've had a hip done, if you have back problems, you can't get your feet up onto the bed. So we do modifications for that. Or if it's too low and a big old low bed that you've had your whole life, you can get on it, but you can't get up. Okay, because it's
Right.
so then we do bed rails and or raise it on furniture risers or things like that. So those are the things that I look at. And as I said, they're easy fixes, most of them, but they make a huge difference.
Okay. And funeral syllabus, it focuses on the idea of make a plan, keep the peace, leave a legacy. How, if at all, can preparing a home for aging in place tie into that broader theme of end of life planning? So I think a lot of people think of end of life as like hospice or you're close to dying, but end of life is a whole long journey and trajectory. So how would those themes of making a plan, keeping the peace, and leaving a legacy tie into preparing your home for aging?
First of all, congratulations to you for Funeral
Thank you.
Syllabus, because it is so needed. And you're right. It doesn't mean the day before you die. There's a lot that goes on. And so what I do so feeds into what you do that it's amazing. And when I do all this, of course, aging in place. So you're preparing and trying to make an environment for yourself that will ease you through your later life. And I know that what you talk about is making these plans and having this all in place. And that's what I talk about also. So I do a lot of speaking around the country. And one of the talks that I do is called Get Your Affairs in Order So Your Kids Don't Have to.
Mm,
And that's what you're doing. And so, I say that you have to, I sort of divide it into three things: organizing your important paperwork, which is all of the banking and the just all of these lists of things so that your kids or whoever will have them. The title to your house and the title to your car and all the where are the your where's your the keys to all these things, and just all of the minutia that people have all laying around, but they don't necessarily haven't shared it with somebody else. Your health information, which is very important to share with somebody and to have organized before a health crisis occurs. Again, because if you have your health history and your list of meds and your doctors and all of these things, and something happens to you health wise, you can just, somebody can come in, swoop in and grab that book. I'm big on having planners and having things written down. I'm also big on paper, which most people
okay.
don't. You've heard of paper. I say, to
Yes.
these people, like, everybody's with the phone and with
My
the,
notebook. Yes, I have
thank you.
notebooks.
Exactly, exactly. I
Right.
have a planner, a paper planner that I love and adore. But you know what? Paper's important, especially
Right.
the age group that I work with, because they're not really, many of them, I shouldn't say they're not, a lot of them are not computer savvy, like many of the kids are, and they don't have their whole life on their phone. And so
Right.
it is important to have this stuff written down somewhere where somebody can have it. And having that information can really, when there is a change in health status, it can really help. So getting our ducks in a row, it really provides stress relief. I feel like it prevents a ton of aggravation for those who come after us, for our kids and our family. And so, when I do these talks, I talk about all the documents that you should have. And all of the advanced directives and all of those things, and then how to begin to declutter and to downsize. So I tell my audience that an important thing is you have to realize that you can't take it with you.
Right.
So to save it, you're saving it all for the kids. And here's the big takeaway: your kids don't want your stuff. Okay. They don't want your brown furniture. There was a huge New Yorker, a very, very, one of their most popular articles, I think, about downsizing and decluttering, and that, it was passed on a million times. Kids of this generation, they don't like brown things. So they don't
Right.
want your armoire and your dining room set and all this stuff and all the crap that you have laying around that you think is so important. So figuring out who gets what is important. And I'll tell you a story. So my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and we didn't realize, actually, from day of diagnosis to day of death was 6 weeks.
Wow.
Okay, 6 weeks. But my mom was also very good at this stuff and very organized and thought it out. And she had us come over to her house, my siblings and myself, and we actually had post-it notes, colored ones. So I was blue, Sandy was yellow, Jerry was green. And we went around and we put down, because my father was still alive and well, what we wanted. And so we would stick it onto the piece of whatever it was, the furniture or the piece, or the china teacup, whatever it was. And so, and that really instead, yes, it was very sad. Yes, we had a big bottle of wine when we did that. Don't let me, make it wasn't a party, but it really, but we did have a lot of laughs and we did go through a lot of things. And in the end, my mom was so relieved because there's no way my father was going to deal with this. And we knew that.
Right.
And it's not like we were going to go in and take everything. He was still alive, thank you very much, and going to and turned out living in his house for a long time. But my mother, he wasn't, she needed to know what we wanted and what we wanted to keep and and it really made a difference. So doing this kind of exercise really is just a really great thing for anybody. And so, that's how feel like what you do and what I do definitely overlap a lot. And,
Right.
getting the house in order and making it so that it's safe, and getting rid of a lot of the stuff is just such, as I said before, it's a win-win for everybody.
Right. And that's a perfect segue into my next question about reducing stress for caregivers and family members. And those are some of the benefits of modifying and organizing and decluttering a home. So, why is the caregiver perspective so important to acknowledge?
Well, because you know what, you've heard of the saying a million times, it takes a village. Caregiving is a huge, huge job. I mean, my, sort of handle on social media is the organized caregiver. That's what I do. And so I do a lot of work helping caregivers get through the process. And it's really important. And I have the second whole half of the book is about organizing the caregiving team, because here's the thing. And I've learned this again from being in the trenches of these families. You can't do this alone. To have one, many times it's the spouse. And I just see this poor spouse, just going down because all of the work of caregiving is so difficult. And so if you can make a team, it really makes a difference. So, modifying the home, making it accessible, making it safe is job number one. So that's what I'll tell the caregivers to start with, is the physical stuff. But then to sort of build a team is really important. It's really, it ensures the success of this whole project going forward. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing is, usually I'll tell people, go for the siblings. I mean, it's funny because often you'll see the situation where the parent lives here and there's one kid who's local. The other two kids are across the country. Of course, the other two kids are the favorite ones. The poor one who lives locally. It's like the daughter lives locally, and all I hear is my son, who's in California. Okay, and we're in New York. It's like, well, your son, and the poor girl is like killing herself. But
Right.
it's very interesting how the family dynamics work. But okay, but you get those siblings on the team, and the son, let's say in California. Okay, he doesn't get off easy. Let him do. Nowadays, you can run your life, as we know, online. Let him
Right.
pay all the bills. Okay, he can do that from California. Let him organize the doctor's appointments and he can do that from California. Let him
Right.
pay for the water and the electricity and blah 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 from California. So look at the tasks, and in the book I divide up all the millions of tasks that caregivers
Right.
do, and to try to help people get organized so that they pick what they can do. And then, though, sometimes you have to go to extended family. There might not be kids around. A lot of people that I work with, thank goodness, the niece, there's always the niece or the nephew, thankfully, somebody like that who can take over. So you try to go outside the box in, other cultures. We were talking about that earlier when we were talking offline. They're better at it than ours. Okay. I went to St. Martin and did a whole talk, and there they revere their elders, and they all
Wow.
live in the same house. Okay. They all, many, many generations. We're starting to see that here, but not as much as they do in other places. And so the grandchildren, they kick in, and an 11-year-old little girl can help Nana take a shower. Okay. And
Right.
so you start getting these kids on board right away, and we have to do better at that here, I feel, in this country.
Right.
But then you go outside the box. So friends and neighbors. Friends are great. Neighbors are great for the what we call the instrumental activities of daily living. So as an OT, I look at activities of daily living, bathing, dressing, grooming, hygiene. Those are the center ones. But then there's the mail, and there's the laundry, and there's the garbage. And there's no reason why the guy next door, when he rolls his trash down to the driveway every Monday night, can't grab your mom's and do that too.
Right.
Okay, it's not a big job. We have trouble sometimes asking for help, and that's a problem. But people want to help a lot, and they most often do. So if you go to the neighbor and say, "Could you just, when you take your own down, could you grab my mom's?" Oh my God, they're so happy. Thank you. Yes, of course.
Okay.
I'd love to be able to help. So, you go outside the box that way and you get the neighbors, the mail retrieval, so let them grab your mail and stick it on your front porch instead of down if you have a mailbox down at the end of the driveway. Those are the
Right.
things. And then if and then also your faith community. Most churches and synagogues, they have committees for this kind of thing. Their social action committee or whatever, where they will have people who are happy to help and check on your mom and do all these things. You should always have a handyman on the caregiving team.
Oh, good point.
Very, very key. Okay. They're
Right.
they're they're way up there sometimes better than, because that's the thing. This little thing breaks, that little thing breaks. And if they live alone, and if you're not local, if the kids aren't local or it's so nice to be able to call whoever it is and say, "Can you do me a favor? This broke, that broke. Can you do this? Can you do that?" So handy people, I should say, are key to the caregiving team. So, and then there's professionals. If none of this works, there's a geriatric care manager who is a professional person whose profession is to help seniors. Mostly when the family's not local, they will pick them up and take them to the doctor. They will get the groceries. They will manage for money, by the way. And by the way, it's expensive because they're not covered by insurance. But a
Right.
geriatric care manager can be life saving for people when they're geographically far away from each other.
Right.
So there's a whole way to build the team, and it's important to build the team because it is very stressful to be a caregiver. And if you have help, of course, it's a lot easier.
Okay. And based on all this wonderful expertise and tips that you shared, what's one thing that you hope listeners will do after hearing our conversation?
Well, the best way, in my opinion, to avoid or at least to minimize um, a big crisis and to keep somebody at home is to start thinking about having the conversation. So we get complacent, and it's funny because my friends know that I do this for a living. And meanwhile, they're all just going about their life. Oh, mom's great. She's in Florida. She's golfing. Dad's, and I'm saying, but did you talk about these things? Oh
Right.
no, everybody's fine. Everybody's fine. And then of course the older person, they're always fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't need any help. I'm fine. And I try to say, don't be complacent. No one ever thinks they're going to get sick until they get sick. We're
Right.
all walking around thinking we're fine. Okay. So don't wait until they have to have a knee replacement because they fell going to the grocery store. Don't wait until they broke their hip on the stairs. Don't wait until dad's on the golf course and drops, has a heart attack. You can't prevent these crises from happening. They're going to happen. But if you plan ahead and you get your plan moving forward, then when it happens, everyone's calmer. So I feel like the biggest stumbling block is not what families should do, but that they don't say it. They don't talk about it ahead. So if I say to people when I do these talks, and I'm saying it to your listeners now, getting the conversation started may not be easy, but the key to making it possible for mom and dad to age safely at home is to get the conversation started. Think of
Right.
it as a positive. Think of it as how you can work together with your parents to help them to stay home. Call a family meeting. And the time to get organized is now, is
Right.
today, is the minute you stop listening to this podcast. That's what I want you to take away from this. Don't put it off. Get the conversation started now.
Okay, great. And I'm going to link your book and your website in the show notes with the YouTube podcast video so people will be able to see it. But in general, if people want to learn more about your book or your consulting services, how can they find you?
Well, they can always find me on my website, which at the moment is called otherwisehealthy.com. And that was the name of my first book, as I mentioned. But now I am rebranding that and changing it. So in a few weeks, it's going to be called
Great.
theorganizedcaregiver.com, which should be easy to remember. And on Instagram and on Facebook, I'm the organized caregiver. So people can always reach out to me through those ways. I do home assessments, so that's what I do. I go into the person's house and I do a walkthrough from the driveway all the way in, up the stairs, through every room. I have them get on the toilet, get in the shower, get on the bed, and then I write up a plan to help them to age in place. And then I go back. I meet with the family and the whoever the homeowner is, and we go through the plan and I give them suggestions. So if someone feels that they would be able to benefit from one of these assessments, you can find me through these sites. And I'm even doing them now because of COVID. I learned how to do it virtually. So,
Okay.
if you live in California, I did a great one with a family in California. The daughter had an iPhone and we FaceTimed and she walked around holding the phone and I watched mom get in the shower from
Oh,
Albany, New
wow.
York. And and saw the whole house and then we did it virtually. So it's really a great way to help them to safely stay in their home for as long as they want to.
Okay, well, that was such great information and great tips. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us today. And I'm hoping that we all can take at least one step moving forward based on the great information you shared. So thank you and have a great rest of your day.
Well, thank you so much for having me.